Hello and welcome back. Appreciate you joining me tonight. I got a couple stories you might want to stick around and listen to about the Appalachian Mountains. Before we begin, if you could be so kind to stick around for a while and hit the thumbs up, it really helps YouTube understand who my audience is. Thank you. Let's begin. I worked in the woods my whole life, logging, surveying, trail maintenance. Whatever paid enough to keep the lights on, you know what I mean? I'm not scared of the dark or the mountains, or the things that people whisper about in bars when they had too much to drink. But Blackroot Ridge, that place changed me. I don't go into the woods at night anymore. I don't even camp or hunt. I don't even sit on my porch at the sunset. 'Cause once you see something that doesn't exist, something that moves wrong, thinks wrong, even looks wrong, you don't ever feel safe again, no matter where you're at. This is what happened. It was late, September, kind of night where the air feels thin and the sky looks bruised. I was working a night shift at a small logging site near Blackroot Ridge. Company didn't like night work, too dangerous. We were behind schedule and the foreman was desperate to catch up. There were 4 of us on rotation. That night, it was just me and a guy named Harlan. He was supposed to be checking the equipment on the far side of the ridge while I monitored the generator and kept an eye on the perimeter. The woods were quiet, too quiet. There was no sound out here, not even the owls or the crickets. I didn't even see any wind, just the hum of the generator and the distant creak of the trees settling. Around 2 a.m. I saw a light moving through the woods. It was a lantern. First I thought it was Harlan coming back early. The lantern's light was wrong. Too bright, too white, far too steady, and it never even flickered. It didn't stay with the wind. It moved like it was being carried by someone who didn't need to walk. The light stopped about 30 yards from me. This is when I called out, "Harlan, is that you?" No answer. The lantern lifted higher, above human height, then tilted slightly, like someone was looking at me from behind it. I stepped back, and the lantern followed. Not quickly or aggressive. It was definitely deliberate. I radioed Harlan, but there was no response. The lantern moved closer, and the trees around it seemed to bend away. They didn't want to touch whatever was carrying it. The light washed over the branches, making them look bleached and brittle, and I felt a pressure in my chest. Not fear or panic, but something heavier, like the air itself was thickening. The lantern stopped 10 yards away from me. That's when I saw the shape holding it. It wasn't a person. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, with limbs too long and too thin. Its skin looked like wet bark, dark and ridged, like it had grown out of the forest itself, and the lantern wasn't hanging from its hand. It was fused to it, growing out of its wrist like a glowing tumor. The creature tilted the lantern again, and the light washed over me. I felt something inside me shift, like the light wasn't illuminating me, but examining me. And it spoke to me, not with words, but with a sound like wood splitting under pressure, a deep crackling groan that vibrated through my bones. The lantern brightened at this point, and pain shot through my skull, white hot and blinding. Images flashed behind my eyes. It wasn't memories or dreams, something else. Forests burning, mountains, and see their collapse. Showed pictures of rivers drying up, animals running. I saw a lot of people screaming. But one final image, it was me, standing in the clearing, deceased. I wasn't injured or attacked, just gone. My eyes were open, my body twisted, and the lantern light shining on my face. The creature lowered the lantern, and this is when the pain stopped. Luckily for me, them images vanished. Turned and drifted back into the woods, and the light shrunk till it vanished completely. I collapsed to my knees. I was scared, shaking even. I found Harlan an hour later, standing at the edge of the ridge, staring into the woods. His face was pale and his eyes wide, his mouth slightly open like he was trying to speak but couldn't. Harlan! Harlan! We need to go. He didn't move. I grabbed his shoulder and he screamed at me. Not a normal scream. It was a raw animal sound that tore out of him. It was like something had been living inside of his lungs. He fell to the ground, shaking violently, and I dragged him back to the truck. Got us both out of there. He didn't stop shaking until we reached the hospital, and he didn't speak for 3 days after that. When he finally did, he told me one thing. It showed me I was gone. Locals call it the Lantern Man. They say it's older than the mountains, older than the trees. It's even older than the people who settled here. They say it doesn't hunt, doesn't chase or kill, just warns. Shows people the way they're going to die. Not to scare them, but to prepare them. Some say it's a guardian. Some say it's a curse. Some believe it's the forest itself giving shape. I don't know what it is, but I know what it showed me, and I won't forget. 2 weeks later, after the incident, I went back to the ridge. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe obsession. The woods were quiet when I arrived. The air was still, and the sky was dark, gloomy. I walked to the clearing where I'd seen the lantern. Nothing. No light or creature, not even a sound. I turned to leave, and the lantern, it appeared behind me, bright, white, and steady. The creature stepped forward, tilted its lantern. The light washed over me. There was no pain this time, though. No visions or images. Just overwhelming warmth. The creature leaned closer towards me, and its voice, that deep, crackling groan, echoed through the clearing. Then it turned and drifted away, and the lantern dimmed. When the woods went silent, the air felt normal again. I left the ridge and never returned. I still don't know what the Lantern Man wanted. I don't know why it showed me what it did. I don't know why it came back. But I know this. I haven't died yet. And every night when the sky goes dark and the woods go quiet, I wonder if that lantern will appear again. Not to warn me, to finish what he started. Wherever he is, I hope I don't see him again. Please. I lived in eastern Kentucky my whole life. I've always believed the mountains were alive. Not in a poetic way people talk about nature being alive, but in a literal sense, breathing and listening and remembering all sorts. The land here has a long memory. It doesn't forget the people who walk it. I used to hike alone, not for exercise, for escape. My marriage was falling apart. My job was suffocating me. And the only place I felt like myself was deep in the woods where the world went quiet. There's a hollow near Pine Mountain that I used to hike through. It wasn't on any official trail map. Everyone in town knew about it. They didn't talk about it though. They didn't even warn you. I don't even think anyone told any stories. They just told us, that land ain't for walking. I didn't listen though. I wish I had. The hollow was wrong from the moment I stepped into it. The air felt thick, not humid or hot, just heavy, like it was pressing down on me. Trees were taller than they had every right to be, and their trunks were wide and dark, their branches reaching out like arms. But the strangest thing was the silence. No birds or insects. You couldn't even hear the wind threading through the branches. Just a thick, unnatural quiet that felt like it had weight. I walked deeper, thinking maybe it was just the right time of day. But the silence didn't change. Didn't even shift. It felt like the hollow was holding its breath. And about a mile in, is when I heard something faint. It was a voice, not talking or yelling. I don't even think it was human. It was singing. Soft wavering notes, no words, just tones rising and falling like breath. I froze. Sound wasn't coming from a person. I don't even think it was an animal. I couldn't tell which direction it was coming from. I just couldn't pinpoint it. Felt like it was hitting me at every direction. From the trees, and the ground, even the air. I should have took this as a warning. I should have turned back, but I didn't. The singing grew louder as I approached the clearing. But when I stepped into it, I realized the voices weren't coming from people. They were coming from the trees, and every trunk vibrated slightly, resonating with some internal hum. The branches trembled in a rhythm. Each of them matched their tone. It was beautiful in a way that made my skin crawl, like hearing something sacred that wasn't meant for human ears. The ground beneath me pulsed. It was a slow and deep thud, traveling through the soil like a heartbeat. The chorus shifted. Pitch sharpened and the rhythm tightened at this point. As the trees leaned inward, it was like they were listening to something approaching. I felt the ground shift under my boots. Not an earthquake. It was like a pause. Slow, deep thud, and it traveled through the soul like a heartbeat. The roar grew louder, urgent, like it was warning me. As I turned to leave, the trees close to me bent, blocking my path. They weren't violent, but just enough to make it clear I wasn't supposed to go that way. The heartbeat grew stronger. Something was moving beneath the clearing, and I don't know how to describe what happened next, except to say the earth opened its eyes. Two enormous, perfectly round shapes formed in the dirt. They weren't holes or depressions. The eyes. They blinked once, sending a ripple through the soul. This time the chorus stopped, and every tree went still. The eyes sank back into the earth. The trees parted, giving me a clear path out. This is when I ran until my lungs burned. I didn't go back for months, but I swear the hollow stayed in my mind. I still remember that singing, that heartbeat, those eyes. Something about it I just can't shake. I couldn't explain it, and I'll never forget it. One night, after a fight with my wife, I drove out to the trailhead, and I didn't plan to go in. I just wanted to be near the woods. But the air was still, and the sky was dark, and something in me felt pulled. As I walked into the hollow, the silence greeted me like an old friend. There weren't any birds or insects, no wind, just that heavy, suffocating quiet. But as I walked deeper, trees seemed taller, the air seemed thicker. That's when I heard it, that same call, soft at first, then proceeded to get louder. It was everywhere again, just like I remembered. As the trees and the branches started to vibrate and tremble, and the ground paused. As I stepped into the clearing, the earth opened its eyes again. But this time it didn't blink. It just stared at me, and the core shifted, not warning this time, but welcoming. The trees leaned inward, forming a circle around me, and the ground pulsed faster. It was like a heartbeat rising. I felt something in my chest respond, almost like a pressure or a warmth. I felt a pull, and this is when the eyes widened and the ground split open. Not like a crack or an earthquake, like a mouth. A deep, dark opening formed in the soul, wide enough for a person to fall into. The call grew louder, and the trees leaned closer, and the heartbeat thundered through the clearing. I stumbled backwards, and the opening followed. The earth moved with me, shifting and rippling and reaching. I ran away, and the core screamed. This is when the trees bent violently, and the ground pulsed like it was trying to grab me. But I didn't stop until I reached my car. Weeks later, I told an old woman in town of what I've seen. She didn't look surprised. She said the mountain ain't solid. It's alive, and sometimes it sings to warn itself. I asked what it was warning itself about. She didn't answer. She just closed the door. I moved out of Kentucky a year later. Found myself a new job and a new life. I changed everything. But the hollow, something about it just stayed with me. Sometimes I hear the core of my dreams, and I can feel the ground pulse beneath my feet. Sometimes I swear I see those eyes in the dirt. Last month I went back, and I don't know why, I just felt pulled, and the hollow was waiting. This time the silence was thicker, and the trees were taller, and the air was a lot heavier than I remembered. The call started before I reached the clearing, soft and welcoming, hungry. I stepped into the clearing, and the earth opened its eyes. This time it didn't blink. It smiled, and the ground split open. As the trees leaned inward, the core rose in a crescendo that felt like it was tearing the sky apart. And I ran. But I don't think I escaped, 'Cause ever since that day, ground pulses beneath my feet no matter where I go. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear the chorus singing inside my bones.